I'm Teone from Teone Rheintal Natural Perfume, and a long time ago, maybe 20-something years ago, I studied aromatherapy. I did a diploma in clinical aromatherapy, and I loved it. It was a beautiful, gentle way of working therapeutically with a whole range of issues, and I focused mostly on emotional kinds of distresses and difficulties that people were having. I started to really deeply explore the possibility of making the kinds of perfumes that I really wanted to have using natural ingredients. And it was never actually about, the toxicity or the assumed toxicity or the kind of the scare stuff that goes on about synthetic perfume. I just wanted lots of perfume, and I knew how to blend essential oils. And so I decided that it would be fantastic to create my own wardrobe. It was never a commercial venture. It was purely for selfish reasons. I wanted a stupendous perfume collection. I knew how to blend essential oils, and I set out to recreate some of the wonders. I wanted all of Dior. I wanted all of Chanel, all of Jean Patou. I wanted to have them all sitting in my wardrobe in the quantities that would last me till the end of time, made by me. You asked me what perfume is, or to describe what perfume is. And there's probably an infinite number of answers to that question. But there are two answers that spring to my mind. One is that the first answer is that I believe perfume is a territorial marker. It's the presence, it's the plant or the animal signaling out to its own species that there's a fertile opportunity here for procreation. Come get me. And human beings aren't satisfied. We're not satisfied with our own organic, inherent human perfume. So we have reached out and harvested the scents, because they're very pleasing, mostly they're very pleasing, of plants, and particularly very aromatic plants and flowers. And we've even scraped the glands of poor critters to beef up the signal that we wanted to send out to each other, that, baby, come get me. But that's not done very much anymore. Well, it's done somewhere and in some form, but generally it's a synthetic thing. I don't ever put animal parts in my perfume. From my point of view, there's no need to. The plants have got the whole game covered. And it's up to the perfumer to actually really push the boundaries of those substances, those foul-smelling, pungent, wicked smells that plants exude, and to incorporate that message into a perfume. It needs to be a letter, a beautiful love letter. The second definition, my definition of what a perfume is it's not enough to just throw a bunch of sweet-smelling chemicals into a flask and swirl them around and say that's perfume. That's not perfume. Perfume is greater than the sum of its parts. It's a statement. It's something that mysteriously and wondrously comes together and just breathes, and it tells a new story. It's no longer about, well, that's lavender and that's ambergris and that's, vanilla. It's never that. It's when the components meet each other head on in a battle within the flask, and some kind of an opera takes place. There's a new animal that emerges, and that's perfume. The most surprising and incredible method of making a perfume is simply about noticing the raw ingredients in such detail that I'm able to select very few ingredients and match them in exactly the right quantities, where the ingredients, the few ingredients used in that particular combination absolutely match each other in the intensity and the complexity of their own essence, so that the sum of 3 or 4 parts just leaps out of the flask. It suddenly becomes long-lasting, incredibly radiant. It projects very far, and there's a luminosity to it that is just breathtaking. That's the best kind of method of making a perfume, is purely about noticing that vetiver, that batch of vetiver is just absolutely meant for that batch of pale green bergamot that's arrived, that they are just perfect bedfellows. And into that mix, the orange blossom that you've been hiding under the cupboard for the last 2 years is, it's just the perfect bridge between the two. And then you've got this simple, elegant efficiency in a perfume. It just works. It just, bang, comes together. That's number one. Number two is what I call waste not, want not. I've made many perfumes that just didn't work. And what I've learned, I used to paint a lot, and I learned pretty early on that a successful painting is one in which the artist has persevered past the troubles, past the limits, past their problems. And often it requires a lot of bold hurling of oil paints at the canvas until you achieve the right density and the right texture and the right kind of spine. And the same is true of those kinds of perfumes that don't easily click together. They are, if it's not great, it's not finished. Now, the third thing that I want to say about my process of making perfume is even more abstract and strange, because I think of a perfume composition as a three-dimensional, say, a cube. Imagine an aquarium, a fish tank with all kinds of tropical fish swimming in it. Some of the fish swim up close to the pane of glass that's, closest to you. Some are darting around in the back. Some are lazily kind of skimming around the bottom at the gravel, and some are up the top swimming around. And there's constant motion and flow. So when I'm composing a perfume, I think of it in terms of that three-dimensionality, and I want to explore where to place those ingredients. Do I put the sandalwood at the back and in the lower corner, in the left corner? Do I bring it further forward and move it into the midsection? Do I support that with some, by amplifying some of the woodier notes of the sandalwood, or do I extend the creaminess by introducing certain florals that really feature, that kind of click together with that? So it's a three-dimensional cube or a shape. Things need to be placed spatially. Spatially is really important. Because I don't use synthetic ingredients, I've had to solve the problem of creating lift and airiness and oxygenating a perfume so that it's not just completely wall-to-wall dense, components. And my way around that has to do a lot of work with tincturing ingredients. And luckily where we live, we've planted Morea paniculata, which is mock orange or orange jessamine. And it's just amazingly grown into this enormous tree that gives us kilograms of that flower every year, several times. So we harvest that, but then I've been able to discover that tincturing that particular flower is a fantastic resource to a natural perfumer's palette, because it provides this kind of opacity, this beautiful it's all the bubbles, it's all the froth, and yet it's not so dominant that you can really detect it. But if it's not there, the perfume sinks. And with it, it's just really effervescent. I tincture vanilla beans, cocoa beans, frangipani. Some friends of ours have a marvellous lang lang tree, and Teone and Dee's lang lang tree is what makes Blue Lotus so beautiful. And yeah, other things, cocoa, vanilla, tonka beans from South America, from Venezuela. All of those things are a wonderful addition to a natural perfumer's palette, because, as I said before, they're not dominating notes, but they're really essential notes to kind of give a perfume dimension. How do I convince friends or strangers to try natural perfume? That's a hilarious question, because a couple of days ago I was meeting with a friend at a restaurant, and I took some samples for him in little, glass bottles. And when he arrived, I was handing them to him, and I dropped one of them and it broke. And the woman that owned the restaurant came running over and was like, "What's that smell? And where can I get that?" And my friend said, "Oh, yeah, it's an amazing smell." So we kind of managed to get a little bit of what had spilled onto a napkin so he could keep it as a reference to take home. And in the meantime, that woman kept chasing me around saying, "Can I have your card? Do you sell this? And where did you get this?" And that's the most common thing. People at supermarket checkouts and everywhere I go say, "What is that perfume? Where can I get that?" My favourite ingredients are things like really beautifully dry, rusty patchouli. That kind of metallic, earthy, sharp, that turns into sweet smell of patchouli, mice or sandalwood. I'm only just really grappling with entry-level oud. The stuff that I've used in several of my perfumes, I've used in vast quantities because I love it. But it's a Vietnamese oud that's cultivated. It's not wild, because I can't afford to buy it in the quantities that I'm using in my perfumes. Talamaya, Kodama, and Ziba all have very large quantities of Vietnamese oud, and it's beautiful. It smells like a cross between single malt whiskey, aged single malt whiskey, and leather. It's a fantastic villain in my beautiful rose sandalwood perfume, Ziba. In Talamaya, it's absolutely, the most potent form of wild earth magic you can find in the deep Scandinavian forests. And in Kodama, it's just this really elegant depth of Japanese culture, in that subtlety of elegance and power and beauty. The understated potency of Kodama comes from, again, the Vietnamese oud. But it's a new ingredient to me. I haven't grown up with it. It's certainly a very addictive thing to be around. I have had a little bit of Brunei oud given to me, and some Hindi or some Indian oud, which I've played around with and made a couple of things with too. But of course, all of the flowers. I think anything that smells like the garden is my favourite ingredient. What's unique about my perfumes, and the thing that I feel probably most satisfied with, is that I set out to make perfume. I didn't set out to make remedies or aromatherapies or kind of hippie stuff. I wanted to have classic French perfume before all of the IFRA kind of the regulations and the restrictions, and before all of the kind of economic decisions made in the boardrooms about how much more profit we can make if we, replicate or duplicate or, replace real oak moss with, all of the synthetic stuff, from vanilla through to every other beautiful thing that's grown in the ground, now becoming something that's created in a lab. So I wanted to run back in time travel back to before that happened, and make perfume that could somehow one day make it into the parlours and the courts of royalty and the places where love affairs were happening and the places where beautiful music was being listened to. Those moments of stillness, those moments of grandeur and those moments of intimacy that I think are really enhanced by real perfume.